As you can tell from the thumbnail of this video, this week something dawned on me. The once great Rush game mode has been butchered. Now, it hasn't happened overnight, and it's been something that's happened probably over the past 5 or 6 years, but it's a real shame. Rush in Battlefield was once a super popular mode and epitomised everything that Battlefield stood for. Fast-paced action, infantry and vehicles, destruction, objective plays, frantic defending, and wave after wave of attackers. If I had a friend who wanted to play Battlefield and they asked, could you show me a clip of what Battlefield was about, I'd show them Battlefield 3 and a 64-man Rush clip. Unfortunately, those images of Rush are a distant memory. In the most recent entry in the series, Battlefield 5, there are rarely any epic moments in Rush. The maps are forgettable, the gameplay is stale, and the same can even be said for Battlefield 1, which came before it. A 24-man Rush mode almost became something that wasn't even worth playing. I went back to try and find servers for it, and whilst Battlefield 1 has a load of players on it, there are no populated Rush servers, which is a huge issue. Battlefield 5 is the same, although you can kind of view it from a different angle, as DICE had Rush as a limited time mode. It didn't even come to the game on release, and people really aren't that bothered about creating custom servers with it. That goes to show how far Rush has fallen. If you go back and play Battlefield 3 or even Bad Company 2 today, Rush and Conquest are the two main modes. It's incredible how well that has held up over time, and it goes to show that's what people want to play. In this video, I'm going to take a little look back at what made Rush so good, with highlights from Battlefield 3 and 4, and also, to make this video a little bit different to all those nostalgic videos taking a look back at Rush, I'm going to take a look back at Arica Harbour, arguably one of the best Rush maps ever made. I'll also look at why Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 5 did Rush incorrectly, and what DICE need to do if they want this epic and very popular mode to return. So, starting out with Battlefield Bad Company 2, arguably the best game in the franchise when it came to Rush. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to record any Bad Company 2. I've been having trouble getting this game to launch on my PC because Origin has not been playing ball, which, you know, has happened to many people. So I've just included a couple of screenshots over the back of some other gameplay from Battlefield 3 and 4. Maybe the game has aged a bit and people wouldn't be that impressed if they went back to play it now, but one thing is certain. Maps designed for Rush in Bad Company 2 are incredible. I'll quickly say now, Bad Company 2 is a good game, but it does miss out on many things. Even at the time, it wasn't the perfect game, and people do look back at it through these rose-tinted spectacles and say, oh, it's the best Battlefield ever. That's not strictly true. Some people do think that, but for the most part, it was quite a stripped-down Battlefield game. It didn't have all of the kind of massive scale of war that we had in Battlefield 3 afterwards, and as I said, it has aged quite a lot. The movement is incredibly clunky. That being said, Rush was good. It's what the game was renowned for. One example that I've used in the past to demonstrate how good Rush can be is Arica Harbour. 5 stages, all of which are enjoyable to play. Let's take a closer look though at some of the screenshots of the map. Obviously this is the map you see before you spawn. This is the first stage of Arica Harbour, the base on the left, the 2 MCOMs on the right. It's quite narrow, one simple route, lots of destructible buildings, the hills to one side, and then the harbour kind of curves around to the other side and the attackers flood down the hill. The way it is set out, it kind of encourages people to move towards the objectives straight away. The bend in the map for the second set of objectives make it very difficult to stand in the original base and camp. Everyone is pushed down towards the next set to get involved. That curve in the road is very, very important, and the way that you are limited to that certain range means DICE could control what players did on this map. Sure, you still get people camping, but it's not across the entire map. More of the same really for the third set. Again, well positioned, and the bend in the road blocks lines of sight, makes it very interesting to play. More buildings, the MCOMs can be easily opened up, and of course you do have a bit of verticality, which is always fun in a Battlefield game. A little more difficult for the attackers now as we get onto the fourth set. If the defenders get their act together, you have the river or the canal or whatever you want to call it that you have to cross over. That can be fairly difficult if people are spamming explosives at you, but for the most part you will get over there and then you can start capping the objective. I seem to remember a vehicle causing a lot of trouble on this set of objectives if you had a good vehicle player. And then finally, the final push objectives are close to each other. Epic plays are possible, as I remember jumping in and trying to arm both objectives at the end of a match with, you know, barely any tickets left. Big moments at the end of an epic game, restricted by the harbour as well, and the buildings do a good job of providing needed cover. Now, I'm not going to compare this to Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 1 because I feel as if that would be a little unfair. DICE have clearly not focused on Rush for quite some time, but a good example of where Rush started to go downhill was in Battlefield 4. As you can see in the background here, I'm playing Dragon Valley, making a right mess of things trying to get to the objective, but the thing that they did with this game that really separates it, I think, from Bad Company 2 is the scale. You can basically sit on any part of the map you want, you're not forced to play the objective at all, and also it's basically the Conquest map. This is the Dragon Valley Conquest map with a couple of MCOMs thrown in. There's very little thought or design that's gone into this, and I'm not trying to say that the map designers don't know what they're doing. They clearly had to make things to a certain time scale. They didn't have the time to make a brand new map, which is a real shame. But I think this is where things started to go downhill. If you've got a 64 player mode on a map that's just been thrown together, it's clearly not going to be the experience that we got in the older Battlefield games. That being said, it still is fun, Rush, on Battlefield 4. The two objectives everybody pushes towards is naturally going to be a hectic experience, and the really rewarding gunplay in Battlefield 4, in my opinion, alongside a few vehicles, is just mega satisfying to play. In the second part of this video, I'm going to take a look at a few things DICE should take inspiration for if Rush is to be a successful mode again. So one of the main reasons Rush has become a low tier game mode with barely any players has to be related to the mode specific maps, as I alluded to before. Spending the time required to make 5 to 6 proper Rush maps is what we need, even if those maps are based on a Conquest map. Clearly dropping a few MCOMs onto a map and calling it a day just doesn't cut it, as we saw in BF4 and BF1. Both of those games had absolutely appalling Rush maps at the start of their life, with Battlefield 4 Rush being almost unplayable. You'd literally have an MCOM in a field. A little more thinking and clever design could mean that we had a map that catered to a few modes. I suppose you can see this with Dragon Valley, as the back part of the map near the US spawn, I think it is, they have the old Noshar Canals remake, which isn't as good as the old one because they tried to reinvent the wheel again for no reason, but that's where that TDM map sits. It's kind of on the Conquest map. They could do something similar with Rush, I'm sure. Another major contributing factor to my enjoyment in Rush is the player count. Battlefield 1 had 24 players and that sucked, it just clearly wasn't enough. Battlefield 3 and 4 had some horrible but very addictive 64 player meat grinder modes. Personally, I think the sweet spot is 48 with the current layouts of the Battlefield 3 and 4 maps, with a few transport vehicles and maybe an LAV or a tank to smash through some walls if you need brute force for that map, but that's of course a different kettle of fish looking at vehicle balance. For the most part though, Rush should be more infantry than vehicles, and maybe 48 and 64 players. The next game though will hopefully have custom servers on release. That means that DICE can almost leave it up to us to choose how many players we want on the map, which is probably the best way to go about it. Finally, variety in gameplay. Bad Company 2 had maps that limited certain engagement ranges. It also had a good array of maps with groundbreaking destruction. This is why people played it so much. It was very addictive and really good fun. Arguably Battlefield 3 had great variety as well with the maps, although some can be really difficult to play. Take, for example, Grand Bazaar. Trying to get through the doorways on the first set of MCOMs, it's very, very difficult if people spam explosives, but then again, people like that. That's what people want to play. Why not have that option there instead of a 24 player husk of a rush mode that we had in BF1, or a limited time mode that clearly no one cares about in Battlefield 5. Simplicity at its best, that was Bad Company 2, and Battlefield 3 was more all-out war. A mixture between those two is what I want to see in the next game. What do you think? Leave a comment down below. thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed some of this Rush gameplay and a little bit of an insight into what I think needs to return in order for Rush to be that great game mode once again in the next game, which is probably going to be Battlefield 6. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.